Microsecond on Earth and the Galactic Forces. This is a Ronald Stein. Let me show here. Yep, Ronald Stein. If you wanted to see more details about Ronald, please access heartland.org. Welcome to the podcast, Ronald Stein.
Armando, glad to be aboard.
Thank you so much. In your article, recent article, I suppose it's this week, you mentioned that we humans are a microsecond compared to the long history of this planet. My point for you is, do you mean that we have little or no influence on climate?
Well, I think we're underestimating the galactic forces that formed the universe and the solar system. And when you take a look at, we're part of the solar system and the sun is a major part of it. And, Earth has been around 4.5 billion years when the system was formed. And like I said, we've been around 4.5 billion years and humans have been around 200 years. And it's like I say, it's just a microsecond. And when you take a look at, all the mountains and, the Grand Canyons and all the rock formations and all the volcanic activity that's occurred over those billions of years, it's amazing the amount of energy and forces that have formed what we see. And, we have Mount Everest, which is the tallest mountain, and the deepest part of the ocean is deeper than the height of Mount Everest. And it's just amazing the size of the Earth, and it was formed without human involvement. And so I think we're underestimating the effect of the galactic forces, and our presence on this planet is so minute. In my office, I'm going to show you. I have a globe, and it just reminds me of. Sorry about this.
No problem.
Yeah, I have a globe, and it's really just reminding me of how much Earth is not land. Like I say, it's like 70% water, and about 29% is land, and most of that land is not inhabitable because it's mountain or deserts, and so we have a minute presence on this planet to begin with, and to think that microscopic presence is going to change, the climate, I think it's, hallucinating, to put it in technical terms.
Yeah. So if you meet an environmentalist, he would ask, or he or she would ask for you, CO2, methane, plastics are relevant to the health of the planet.
Well, people talk about climate change. I don't know about Brazil, but here in California, we go through like a 30 or 40 degree change from morning to evening in one day. So
Wow.
it's, it could be cold in the morning. If I go play golf, sometimes I get start at 32 degrees. When I finish, it's going to be 60 or 70 degrees. And yeah, so there's a lot of changes. And to microscopically look at something and say, well, humans caused this, I take it with a grain of salt. There's been a lot of glacial movements. The Grand Canyon, it was developed over 12,000 years. Now, bear in mind, we've been here 200 years. And apparently it took about 12,000 years of water erosion carving out this majestic, cliffs and valleys. Can you imagine the amount of water it took to form the Grand Canyon? We weren't here at that time. And so, yeah, there's a lot of, this is a big Earth. And when you take a step back, it's just amazing. And the sun is huge. It's, 300,000 times is size of the Earth. It's huge. 100 times the diameter of Earth. And it weighs 300,000 times more than Earth. So it has a huge force on our planet. And like I say, we're just, just like the animals. We're just an inhabitant. And I have mixed emotions that we really we're trying to keep it clean, and we should, but I'm not sure that we have the power
Influence
to
not
change
for.
anything. Yeah. And we keep talking about, CO2 emissions. Well, CO2 is something that is measurable, so we can, quantify it. But like CO2 right now is around 420 parts per million. And technically, I think we're at the point of CO2 starvation, because if CO2 gets down to 150 parts per million, all life doesn't exist. And it's crazy. And when you take a look at CO2, commercial greenhouses, they artificially raise the CO2 levels to like 1,000 to 1,200 parts per million to maximize growth rates. And, CO2 levels in submarines is like 3,500 parts per million, almost 10 times what it is outside. And it's crazy. The space station, their concentration is like 3,000 parts per million. And I think CO2 is a food for life, for plants and animals. And so like I say, I'm not sure of the targets where we're trying to go after. I'm all for improving in efficiencies and conservation, because what we have, we want to enjoy it and not waste it. We don't have to be a throwaway society. I think if we can continue to keep reusing things, that's to man's benefit. And, I'd like to have this planet be around a couple more million years. You and I aren't going to be here, but
No, for sure not.
we sure don't want to, waste it, during the short time we're here.
Yeah.
And no, it's a great place to live, and want to keep enjoying it.
But Ronald, what's the reason or reasons that people are claiming about CO2 with so many times and groups of people, environmentalists? What's the reason? It's only political issues?
Armando, I'm really not sure. People talk about global warming, climate change, but the Earth has gone through so many changes to form what we have. And like I say, when I look at this globe, and it's a solar globe, this is always spinning, and I'm just amazed of how much water there is on this planet. We're mostly a water planet. It's mostly ocean. And very little land, as I mentioned, of the land that's available, a good part of it's not habitable because it's mountains and deserts. So we're just a tiny speck in the microscope. But if you want to be an environmentalist, I guess you can magnify anything. The temperature changed, 2 degrees. Oh, hey, man caused it. I don't buy into that.
And a curiosity, why are there so many environmentalists in California?
I think that's the only people we allow to live here as environmentalists. It's a temperate climate, and yeah, I guess it's a great collection point. And we have a lot of policymakers that believe all this stuff, and pass laws and regulations. But I think it's in effect driving up the cost of a lot of products. So yeah, we tend to be a magnet for a lot of environmentalists. And Scripps Institute has got a big presence here. And yeah, so we have, a huge, coastline. And yeah, it's a great place to live and be an environmentalist.
I suppose not the influence of San Andreas fault, no?
Well, again, the San Andreas Fault is, one of those Earth developing activities that Earth has occurred. And we have no impact on earthquakes. And whenever the Earth is going to settle or move, it's going to do that. Fortunately, a lot of that was done before man really became, present. Man's been here, from primitive man a lot longer than present day man. But I relate to man being here 200 years, ever since the discovery of oil a couple hundred years ago, because in the entire world, there was like 1 billion people estimated to be. But in the last 200 years, we populated from 1 to 8 billion. Not because of oil, it's because of the products that we have from oil. We now have, toothpaste and, clean water and sanitation systems. And, now we have, merchant ships and planes and, medications. There's a lot of infrastructures that didn't exist 200 years ago. The medical industry didn't exist. Telecommunications didn't exist. And from all that, medications that are available and the food, being able to grow food anywhere in the world and move it from one country to another country because we have ships and planes to move it. Today, because we have 8 billion people, well, we also have, 50,000 merchant ships and 50,000, airplanes. And now we need all those merchant ships and planes just to keep product flow, moving around the earth, because we have, like I say, we got a pretty healthy planet, and some countries are wealthier than others. And when you take a look at the wealthy countries, which is like the U.S., U.K., Germany, Australia, population-wise, we only represent about maybe 6-7% of the world's population.
Yeah, no more than
And
10%. Yeah.
yeah, and the developing countries, they would love to live the lifestyle that we have. And like I say, I think it'd be to their advantage. They don't have access to the medication. They don't have access to
No,
the transportation we do. And we just take
there's
it for
limitations.
granted. Yeah. And so there's, like I say, there's a lot of people. And the interesting thing is the wealthy countries, like I say, represent, less than 10% of the world. Well, of the 8 billion on this planet, it's estimated that 80%, which is more than 6 billion people, they're living on less than $10 a day. I mean, they're still burning cow dung to get heat.
Yeah.
And I mean, they're living a lifestyle that it's almost incomprehensible that
Yeah.
we couldn't do it. And, those people would love to join the Industrial Revolution, love
No
to
doubt.
basically have everything we have and have, manufacturing and, sanitation available to them. But I think we have a lot to do to get them there. And, with all the planes and ships and, medications and, communication system we have, I think we can do that and help improve their lives. And, like I say, help them live like we're living.
Yeah. Ronald, the US, UK, the UK, European countries are forcing this transition, putting pressure in this transition. Is there a specific reason? Only political issues, or they know much more than you and me know?
The transition to,
Energy.
well, again, I think, and we've chatted before, I think the use of the word energy is totally misused. Because when they talk energy, are we talking electricity or are we talking products? Because all the policymakers say wind and solar energy is going to replace fossil fuels. But Armando, that's a total impossibility because wind and solar do something totally different than crude oil. Wind and solar can generate electricity, they can manufacture nothing for society.
But
Wind turbine,
they
do they
know
know?
this, no?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do. Because, wind turbines can't make too many tires, and it's just a total misunderstanding of the use of energy because products. I was interviewed in a New York TV station, and one of the first questions to me was, "Hey, Ron, I understand you're pro-oil." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm definitely not pro-oil. I'm pro-products we get from oil. If we can get those products from another source, hey, let's do it." But like I say, it's, and today with our ingenuity, we've been able to develop more than 6,000 products in our daily lives. Everything in your house, your workplace, the hospital, wherever, trying to identify something that was not made with those crude oil derivatives. And wind and solar only generate electricity.
But Ronald, I cannot understand John Kerry, not saying something against him. No, no, he's a clever guy. Al Gore, vice president of the country, and other people from Europe talking exactly the opposite. What are you talking now?
Primarily because they won't participate in the conversation. Because, Al Gore, President Joe Biden, they want to get rid of fossil fuels. Well, to start the conversation, it would be an open-ended question. My question would be, why do you want to get rid of the medical industry? Why do you want to close all the airports? Because, when you take a look at it, and people, especially policymakers, they don't understand electricity came after, AFTER, after oil. Because all the parts to make coal generate electricity, natural gas electricity, hydro, nuclear, wind, solar, all the parts and components to generate electricity, even the light bulb was made with oil. We got 6 ways to generate electricity, and all the parts and components are made from the oil derivatives, all the electronics and the insulation, etc. Those are components that come from oil. And if you get rid of oil, Armando, you're going to eliminate wind, solar, hydro, nuclear, natural gas, coal.
But only wealthy countries like the US, UK, and European countries, because Chinese, Indians, Asians, they are not thinking the same way. They are thinking differently.
I'm not sure. Like I say, I think it's delusional thinking because, get down to basics. Because for example, fossil fuels, there's 3 fossil fuels. There's coal, natural gas, and oil. Well, coal and natural gas are heavily used for the generation of electricity. Oil, on the other hand, is never used to generate electricity.
No.
In fact, oil is black tar. It's useless unless you can manufacture it through these complicated refineries where they heat it and they beat it and they, break it down. And we're able to get the derivatives that makes everything in our common lives and different fuels for trucks and planes and ships, the space program. Like I say, people are just trying to compare wind and solar as replacing oil, and it can't because they do different things.
And there is something curious because they measure the efficiency of wind and solar by the investments they are doing, not by the response, the answer to the energy.
Well, then too, you're comparing, of the 6 ways you've got generating electricity. You got coal, natural gas, hydro, nuclear, those 4, then wind and solar. But wind and solar can't compete with the other 4 because wind and solar only generate occasional electricity. The other 4, nuclear, hydro, natural gas, and coal, they generate continuous, uninterruptible electricity. And today, with telemetry and computers and hospitals, we need continuous electricity. And they keep talking about the nameplate ratings of wind and solar. Well, nameplate rating doesn't do you any good. It's just like having a 500 horsepower nameplate rated car in your driveway. It's not going anywhere unless you start it. And yeah, it's like I say, this world cannot live on intermittent electricity. You know what happens when you get a power dip in your computer? You got to reboot it.
Yeah, and it requires to be standby as with natural gas and coal plants too.
Well, yeah, then you're talking about having a redundant system. I mean, it costs so much to have one system. Now you want to have a backup that only operates occasionally? It's really the other way around. If you're relying on wind and solar, you need the continuous electricity running all the time. So when the wind stops, you still have electricity. If you're in the hospital and operating room, you don't want the lights to go out.
Yeah. The amplitude of the intermittence is high. You know something about is it goes to zero or only fluctuate around 100%.
Well, it's pretty much weather dependent. You know, if the wind's blowing and the sun is shining, you know, you have electricity. In different parts of the country, you know, here in California, we have a temperate climate. So we have, you know, sun more often than a lot of other states. Between, you know, California and Florida, we're probably the two most temperate states. But you look at the Midwest, you know, they get, you know, snowstorms and tornadoes and, you know, like I say, you get, you know, snow and a lot of rain. And, you know, if it's snowing on your solar panels aren't going to generate as much electricity. So, yeah, depending on the climate, it varies. And obviously, the climates vary around the world. And so we have a real challenge to, like I say, the world cannot survive on occasional electricity. The world is surviving because we're a materialistic society. And all the materials right now are coming from the oil derivatives we get out of crude oil. Hey, if we can replace that, I'm all for it. You know, everybody gets a patent and somebody will, you know, eventually, you know, clone it and come up with another way to make it. But we've had 200 years to replace crude oil and been unable to do it. And obviously wind and solar is not replacing crude oil because they do different things. One generates electricity and one makes products.
Interesting. So we have in the world three innovations: EVs, wind, and solar electricity generation. So these three things, 2 decades ago, we didn't have these things. So it was very fast, these innovations, no?
Well, it was battery technology. Like I say, the fact that, you know, one of the problems, one of the real challenges of the green movement is it relies a lot on the exotic minerals and metals like lithium and cobalt and nickel. And there isn't as much of a supply around the world of those exotic minerals and metals versus oil. It seems like every country's got oil and you can explore for it. And, you know, we have a lot of oil here offshore in the Pacific Ocean. But with the technology, you don't have to drill offshore. You do on land and you slant drill to access it. But the lithium and cobalt, like cobalt, which is one of the major components of battery technology today, 90% of the cobalt in the world is in Africa. And lithium is, you know, divided among us, you know, a couple countries, and it's, you know,
When
it's
you
really,
say when you say it's in Africa because child and slave labor.
well, the cobalt is there, and the way they're getting it is through the fact that, you know, the labor laws in Africa, labor laws in China are minuscule or non-existent.
No, not.
Same thing with the environmental laws. And so, yeah, you have the exploitations of you know, people have yellow, brown, and black skin. We know there's pictures, you know, 6-year-olds digging for the stuff by hand in those countries. That's okay because they don't have any labor laws. But, you know, to me, it becomes really an ethical challenge for the wealthy countries. They want to promote EVs, but, you know, China controls 80% of the lithium and nickel and all the other exotic minerals and metals. And then 90% of the cobalt comes from Africa. And these two countries, like they're exploiting people that have different color skins and the environmental degradation on their land.
No.
There's no environmentalists over there. They're all here in California. but the exploitation of people over there is okay because it's over there. And the environmental degradation is on their land. It's on their land. We can't see it, so it's okay. Yeah. And I think that's unethical. I think it's immoral. But we're so focused on green, we're not paying attention to, you know, what the world is paying for us to go green.
And to move these supply chains from Africa, for instance, for another place, a wealthy place, it's impossible. You cannot move.
Well,
to
when you
United
talk about
States.
a supply chain, there's got to be a source of lithium and cobalt and all these metals. And here in the United States, there isn't too many sources. I think the Salton Sea, I think they believe there's a lot of lithium there. But Armando, if you're going to drill for lithium in the Salton Sea, which isn't too far from California, all the environmentalists are going to come out of the wall. So you're going to have to adhere to the environmental laws. You're going to have to adhere to the labor laws. And that's a major component of batteries. And right now we're getting it very inexpensively from developing countries. And if we got to pay dearly for it, the price of EVs is going to go skyrocketing up. So, there isn't. The strange thing is there's, I think, 1.4 billion vehicles in the entire world. That's a lot of batteries. Yeah. And today there's not enough lithium and cobalt in the world to make that many batteries.
And the risk is that one day something similar to what's happening in North Africa with uranium and France. So the independence of those countries that in the past they were suppliers of uranium. Nowadays they do not want to be anymore to France. So the minerals in Africa, maybe one day we have problems like this one.
I think so. And like I say, we lead I want to use the term, a sheltered life, being here in the wealthy countries. And we're really not paying attention to, how this green movement is being attained.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I say, and I've stated this before, and I stand by it right now. I will not buy an EV for ethical and moral reasons. Because after writing the book, Clean Energy Exploitations, Todd Roy and I did a lot of research. I know where the lithium and cobalt's coming from. And Armando, I'm not willing to financially support that. I think it's unethical and immoral. I'm in shock that our government is. They provide financial incentives for you to buy an EV and tax breaks. And they're basically encouraging China, Africa, continue exploiting your people. Continue the environmental degradation on your land. That's okay. We're going green.
We need to have an appointment with Elon Musk to tell him about these issues because he doesn't.
He's making too much money.
Yeah, I was not aware of this. My God, it really is. So, what's the conclusion that we are microseconds in the galactic? What's the conclusion for that?
I say the best solution is, until we can clone the product supply chain, continue to focus on improving the efficiencies and the quality of the oil we're using, conserve it as much as possible. And, I'd like to have it available for, our grandkids and their grandkids and that type of thing. But, just because we have it, we definitely do not want to waste it. Because, like I say, the planet's been around 4.5 billion years, and we've been here 200 years. You and I have been here less than 100 years. And so it's obviously there's a lot of people to come, behind us and would like to preserve as much for them as possible. So conservation and continued efficiencies, improvement in efficiencies, because if we can continue the improvement in efficiencies, what oil we do have, it'll last longer and longer and longer. And, I see that today because the cars, cars today are much cleaner than they were 40, 50 years ago. And the washing machines are much more efficient than they used to be. And so everything is much more efficient. Lighting is very, very efficient. And we just got to keep focusing on basically using the least amount of energy, from the world as possible. And, maybe battery technology will develop, but my concern is it's the exotic minerals and metals that, like I say, there aren't that many to go around. The Tesla has a 1,000-pound battery, and it requires, to get all the different lithium, cobalt, nickels, and magnesium, you got to move, it's estimated like 500,000 pounds of earth to get those materials to make one battery. Now the movement is to make 18-wheelers electric. Well, 18-wheelers big vehicles, and they require a 16,000-pound battery.
Wow.
So you got to move 8 million pounds of earth to get the materials needed for one battery.
Interesting.
And like I say, this, you know, the developed countries have the bulk of the vehicles. And right now there's 1.4 billion in the entire world. And, you know, if we can get the developing countries to start getting vehicles, yeah, there'll be a lot more because, like you say, I keep thinking of the more than 6 billion people that are living on less than $10 a day while we're enjoying the good life.
Yeah. If I could add to conclusion, wealthy countries should take care of moral and ethics supply chains, including all tiers of supply chains for green energy.
Yes, yes. But, and you see, you know, some efforts, but it's, you know, when you think about it, you know, where's the material supply chain? And that's why when I look at an EV, I'm looking at China and Africa made that battery. And that's that's hard for me to digest.
Yeah. But it's incredible the number that you brought to us, a 1,000 pound battery in a car.
For Tesla, yes.
Oh my God.
And you know, the
So
roads
five
we have,
people, five, it's equivalent to 5 people to carry
yes,
5 people.
yes, yes. And the roads we have, you know, they're made out of, you know, asphalt, mostly out of asphalt. Now we have heavier vehicles basically tearing up the roads. And if you get 18 wheelers and add 16,000 pounds to each truck, yeah, it's heavier vehicles be tearing up the road. And wind and solar can't make asphalt, and they can't make
That's right.
concrete.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, wind and solar make nothing, and you know they just generate electricity. And as I mentioned, everything that needs electricity, the iPhone, the iPad, your television set, you know, your refrigerator, it's all made with the oil derivatives from oil for those
For
products.
chemicals, yeah.
So, and I think instead of focusing on going green, we should try and find out, is there a way to clone oil? I don't know
Yeah.
if there is. We've had 200 years to do it, you know, and if we can get a Elon Musk type person to clone oil, be a wealthy person.
That's good. Thank you so much, Ronald Stein. It was a pleasure
Armando,
again.
always a pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Same to you.